If you're new to the channel, please be sure to like, share, and of course subscribe and leave a comment down below. And also check out our partners, Nerds in the Hood, down in the description. And I hope to see you later on. Peace out. Okay guys, so welcome to, of course, another alternative factuals video. Now this video is going to continue the story that we've been telling regarding the rise of King T'Challa and how the world was initially introduced to Wakanda in Marvel Comics. Now I'm going to be making some references right now to some real life events that also Marvel seems to reflect in terms of the transatlantic slave trade. Now some of you may have not known that the transatlantic slave trade began in the 15th century after the Portuguese started exploring the coast of West Africa. Now first, the number of enslaved Africans taken was really small, but in about 1650, however, with the development of really large plantations on the newly colonized Caribbean islands and the American mainlands, the trade itself really grew, which thus required them to get more Africans and thus expand the whole idea of the transatlantic slave trade. Now, I made this reference because there are going to be moments in the story in which T'Challa or even some of the people don't necessarily reference it directly, but when they say they haven't been conquered, this is what they're referring to. A lot of the slave trading and the treatment of, Africans as a whole, as well as anyone who wasn't of European descent, as they sought to take over a lot of the global nations and stuff like that throughout of history. So that's what they're going to be referencing in terms of this moment, since, Wakanda is in Africa. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So we last left off with T'Challa becoming the king of Wakanda after Ulysses Klaw shot his father. And remember, when he shot him when he shot his father, T'Challa was basically the intended target. And of course, when this happened, T'Challa actually took off Ulysses Klaw's arm, and this is all taking place when Klaw invaded Wakanda. Now the story picks up with a time skip. We assume that T'Challa's in his early 20s, as he is currently pursuing some people who snuck into Wakanda as construction workers in order to gain access to the country's lifeblood, aka the vibranium. Now these workers were hired to build a burning T'Chaka, which is basically a statue monument to honor T'Challa's fallen dad. And like I said, they snuck in to escape with the vibranium. Now during his interaction with these men, T'Challa is narrating the fact that these men and possibly other people would learn about the heart-shaped herb and its origin. Now for those of you who may not be aware, the heart-shaped herb is a result of centuries of the vibranium affecting the agriculture of Wakanda. Also, the heart-shaped herb will kill someone if they not come from a bloodline of the royal family. And the reason that is over the course of Wakanda's history, the royal bloodline, whatever the case may be in terms of their genetics, somehow allowed them to develop immunity to its really deadly effects, but had an adverse effect and actually gave them panther-like abilities with enhanced senses, strength, giving them, the abilities of the so-called Black Panther. Now, after he's kind of narrating all these things, T'Challa really made quick and easy work of these men. And then that's when we get a flashback to when T'Challa first became the Black Panther. Now, as you saw in the movie, Challenge Day was a ceremony in which everyone would fight for the title of Black Panther who was eligible for it. Now, during this flashback, his uncle Sion was the Black Panther because T'Challa was at the time too young, and he ruled as regent, which means temporary king, until T'Challa became of age to rule Wakanda. During Challenge Day, nobody was aware that T'Challa had entered because he was fighting with a mask on that hid his face, so nobody can really stop him from entering. But after taking out everyone, including the Dora Milaje and his uncle, it was soon revealed that T'Challa not only entered before 2 decades he said he would, but he finally had taken his place as the new Black Panther and the king of Wakanda. Now we fast forward to the present time in which we started, and T'Challa is speaking with his uncle about the intentions of revealing Wakanda to the world. Now T'Challa is saying all of this while looking at the screen, while it's showing the uprise of mutant kind, the arrival of Thor and Earth fighting monsters, and the arrival of Galactus. He knows that times are changing and that they must change too if they're to survive, because if some sort of cataclysmic event were to take place in the Wakandan or African area, he would need assistance at some point in the future. Now, as you can expect, Sion, obviously T'Challa's uncle, disagrees with this promptly. And remember, Wakanda has never been conquered despite T'Challa's intentions, and his uncle made very valid points in terms of why they should not open the borders. I mean, opening Wakanda's borders would really expose them to a new world of problems, because people will not only want their precious vibranium, but also they will technically want their technology, and they would seek to steal it from Africa, because like I said, during the transatlantic slave trade, when they were taking Africans from the continent of Africa itself, they not only took the Africans, but they took their resources like diamonds, salt, and a bunch of other things that were very native to the lands of Africa. And it would actually just be another kind of slave trade, so to speak, in some way, shape, or form, because Wakanda has never been conquered, 1, and 2, the vibranium is extremely valuable all over the world, because there is no other place that has something like that. All right, one thing is very clear though. Sion wants his nephew to be more like his father, T'Chaka, because T'Challa kind of decides to open the world up to Wakanda. And he does this in a way that he informs the people, like with these holographic machines that fly around the nation of Wakanda. And he's basically doing this all at once so he can tell his people what's going on. And like I said, in this kind of aspect, I know both sides of the arguments, because T'Challa is making a very valid argument, as well as his uncle, because in the history of Marvel Comics, we can see what has opening the borders done to Wakanda, where Dr. Doom has invaded, and you've had, like I said, Hydra constantly trying to steal the vibranium in order to use it for nefarious means, or you've had Ulysses Klaw. So things like that is very, very plausible, and both arguments are very valid. Now, this is probably maybe like a couple days, maybe a week, and we catch up with T'Challa as he's investigating random abductions of people in Wakanda and various other African nations, and eventually this will lead him to run into Namor the Submariner. Now, this story is kind of to introduce how they kind of found their interaction, because Namor and T'Challa were not always enemies. And for those of you who don't really read Marvel Comics or haven't really been keeping up with the more recent comics, Namor and T'Challa are not on good terms. I mean, they are on terms where if they see each other, it's on sight, like they have to fight. So, but this is a little story on how they first learned about each other and the relationship that they had when they first met. Now, of course, when they first meet, obviously they have to fight each other, because that's not like a typical superhero story, like two superheroes or two heroes meet and then they fight, and then, you know, eventually they figure out that they're actually trying to find the same person or achieve the same goal. So not too long after investigating, Namor and T'Challa find out like who's behind this, and eventually, of course, they find out it's an Atlantean working with the African native named Zorun. The Atlantean was actually trying to figure out a way how to kill Namor, since technically, for those of you who don't know, Namor is a mutant / Atlantean hybrid, basically a better version of Aquaman. So they both make quick work of these bums, because obviously that's what they are, and they both go home in good terms, or so we thought. Now, like I said, in Marvel Comics, they're not really on good terms, T'Challa and Namor. So obviously we find out in this story that T'Challa actually ends up keeping the research that the Atlantean and the African Zorun have been doing in order to defeat Namor, as well as, you know, what they've kind of discovered when it comes to genetics and trying to get various different technologies in order to kind of enhance or boost their status in their respective nations. But T'Challa does have this information, and he does not tell Namor or anyone else that he has it, and brings it back to Wakanda. Hopefully he wouldn't have to use it in this case, but he's using it just in case Namor does become a threat. But if you're new to the channel, please be sure to like, share, and of course subscribe and leave a comment down below, and I hope to see you later on. Peace out.